Hello and welcome back to the Mediocre Marketer. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is Christina Davis. Hi, Christina.
Hi.
I'm so glad to have you on the show, partially because we're pretty close in how long we've been in logistics, our time frame, and I think along the way we've both learned some things about what it is to be a female, what it is to be a leader, what it is to keep pace with the industry. And I would love to dive in today with a workshop, kind of kicking off talking about the workshop that you recently hosted and go from there.
Right. So I've always been interested in these kind of things. And I will say that, coming out of college and going to my first job, I didn't think at all about, females in the industry or being treated differently at all. So it's one of those things where I came into the industry and I was just like, okay, there's a need for something like this to have an outlet to bond with, fellow female logisticians and just really find a group to work on women's empowerment because it is a male dominated industry. And like you said, we've been in the industry a similar amount of time. So it's been almost 9 years for me. And I've worked, across a bunch of different roles. But the workshop that we most recently hosted, and it started out something that I did with my office and just the females in my office, but I really wanted to open it up to a wider group of women to reach more people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if anybody I meet just sounds interested in it, I'm more than happy to share the worksheets that I use or any information that I use. I always start off every meeting and workshop with, I'm no expert. I'm just here curating things that people much smarter than me have put together to help in different situations like this. So the most recent workshop is redefining gender stereotypes in the workplace. I host it with Savannah Women's Social Club now because they have a huge following and it's like an amazing group of women here locally. My idea for the future would be for anybody who has like a similar group to, be able to use the materials that I put together.
Right.
So redefining gender stereotypes, it was one of those things where I've seen a bunch of different topics come up that, it's all about communication and, language and the words that we use. And I was like, all right, this sounds like a great topic because it's not only about confidence. That's another huge topic that we do a lot of workshops for, but the redefining gender stereotypes is, the keyword there is redefine. It's all about the words that we speak and they become our reality. So the reality is that if you aren't actively working to make things better for women, then you're kind of hurting the cause. You got to focus on gender equality, and the lack of speaking about it just kind of stops it in its tracks right there. So my focus for the workshop is all about having these women leave the workshop with basically a brand new vocabulary to use. And not only when you speak about, yourself, but when you speak about other women, whether it's, how you speak about different female leaders, but just your coworker, that's the thing too. I've, met plenty of what I believe are strong, powerful women in my career. And, sometimes they don't talk about themselves in the best way.
Right.
They're hard on themselves. And I was like, all right, so let's, go at this thing with basically like your confidence and like women's empowerment toolkit with just a list of actual vocabulary words that you can use. And the workshop focuses on taking the negatives that we might hear for both men and women and leaders, and then the positives that we can basically replace those with.
Right. So then let's put some definitions behind these things. And I want to start actually on the male side. What are stereotypes that you've unearthed that people attach to men in the workplace in the supply chain?
So I'd say a big one is like, they're confident. That's a solid one that we can use as an example. So, oh, this male leader's he's just so confident. So if you wanted to take that and like we're putting it in the like through the workshop, you'd say, okay, what's a negative way that you could talk about a man who is confident, which confidence is something that you look for in a leader. So you might say that that person is cocky. That could be another way. But typically, in the industry, it would be more so like, okay, they're confident. And then on the female side, it would be like, okay, they're bossy, they're loud, they're abrasive, when in fact, across it all, we're talking about confidence. And I'm not saying that there's not people out there who are cocky or, bossy, but in general, it's one of those things when you don't want to mistake a leadership characteristic for something that it's not.
Right.
Like we want it to be a leadership characteristic and not have anything to do with the gender.
Right. Because you touched on one, stereotypes have you seen attached to women? Because I feel like for me, there is the one where it's like, well, she's, bossy, she's kind of a witch. She's too emotional is one that I've seen of like, the way that I've seen that come out, and the way that I've kind of been, I don't know if I've experienced this in a way where somebody has like labeled me to my face, but I have felt that people think when you or I or another female kind of puts a little bit of passion behind it, and not in like a stern way, but I really believe in this thing, and you start bringing in the emotional impact that a decision may have on customers, on prospects, on internal teams, on, the front lines or the management team. An easy one would be like ways that we're training people internally. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, she's like way too emotional about this decision. That like, it's not that big of a deal, I feel like is a really good comeback that has been presented in certain cases. So are there any other ones? And like I said, that's just from experience, both of what I've witnessed as an employee, and that happened to a manager of mine, and also somebody who is a little bit more passionate in that way of like the human aspect of decisions, that I have probably been labeled and not known it.
Right. And that's really interesting for you to say that, because I feel like that's a specific situation that, women might have found themselves in, but not even realize that's what's happening. And then you're kind of just like, what's going on? And so that's why, at least like in the workshop, I was like, it's important to label the negative too, because then you can recognize it. Because sometimes you have women just like, if you couldn't understand what was actually happening there, like how are you supposed to fix it? So we have to talk about bad stuff first and then replace it with the positive stuff. But I totally agree. I think I've been in similar situations, and not every woman is privy to being in on conversations where leadership is talking about the characteristics of their employees and discussing promotion opportunities and career paths. So a lot of this stuff is happening behind closed doors. So I think any chance that you get to redirect the conversation and replace those negative words with positives is like, you have to jump and take that opportunity to speak up, because, like I said, you just can't stay silent about it. And you can make a huge difference just in the way that you talk. People will treat you like they're going to think about you the way that you present yourself. So why not talk about yourself the way that you want to be seen? For something like that, it's like, being overly eager or easily excitable, things like that. And passionate, it would be, I think that's a great, to me, that's a positive thing, because I want people that are passionate, but perception could play into that, where they're like, oh, they're just passionate about it, and almost see it as like a negative thing. But to me, that's like, one of the qualities that the group from the previous, most recent workshop did was leaders take initiative. And to me, that's a great thing, that you're taking initiative and you're really excited to get something done. And I don't see how that's a negative, but it's all in the way that you talk about it. So I did put together an example with like you hear someone say along the lines of, oh, Betty is not the best fit for the role. She is too nice or too emotional. So you could nod in agreement or even stand up for Betty and just say, I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay, right. That's not bad. That's not a poor response. You are standing up for Betty. But redefining the stereotype is kind of taking it to the next step. It's way more active. So you could literally redirect it. I think what you're viewing as too nice or too emotional is actually a form of emotional intelligence or a method of bonding with the team to build trust. And that would be highly beneficial for whatever role, if it's a leadership role, because again, when we are defining the different characteristics of a leader, one of the things that was consistent across the board is, being able to build trust with the team.
Yeah. I love, like you said, the redefining that, not just accepting it, because I feel like there's levels, right? Like you can accept it, do nothing about it, and just let it play out. I think you can put a stop to it or attempt, to end the progression of whatever that thought is going to be about that person. And then there's a more active approach, like you said, where then you kind of take that and you put it in a better light, or you reframe it just from a different perspective. And I think a lot of things that can be perceived as, it's kind of like in an interview when they say like your weaknesses, position that in a way where it's like a strength or like an opportunity. And I see it that way because there are very extreme like stereotypes for both men and women. Men are seen as not very nurturing, sometimes overly competitive and too career oriented and, aggressive or very assertive. And I don't know that those are the best ways to look at them either. And I want to balance it out because I'm all about women empowerment, but I do want to champion the narrative for like both sides. Because what I don't want to do is like, oh, now like it's the women against the men and us buying into those as well. I think it's important for us to find that level playing field of how we're viewing one another.
Right. And that's all you're doing. And like, if you come at it from that perspective, like I genuinely don't believe how, men in leadership would see that as a threat at all, because it's like you said, it's just leveling the playing field. We're not asking for handouts or anything. It's just, equality at its finest. One of the things that I always start any workshop with or any meeting like that is, there is no bad mouthing anyone. Like, you're not going to tell us specific names and like start talking about different people. And you're not here to bash men, because that can easily, slip into that sometimes. And I just 100% start out with that. The entire workshop series and any of these meetings is supposed to be positive. It's not for us to, just vent and, badmouth people. It is 100% to be productive and positive.
Yeah. And I love that rule. I think that keeps everything, like you said, it keeps things moving forward. And I think it is, toxic to allow things to spiral into like very specific personal, like situations in a workshop. I think that's a great opportunity for a conversation with like a mentor or a trusted friend, of whether they're, somebody that you look up to or somebody that you're like walking side by side with. And then, I do think it's important to while we're talking about stereotypes is um, kind of looking at not just reframing those, but also like pulling in those like sub elements of people's character that support the positives of those stereotypes. You know what I mean? Like, I think a really big stereotype of women is that we're um, like less ambitious, or I guess because of like modern day like culture, especially like work from home world after COVID, is like we're so focused on the work life balance, like we don't really want to work. And so I love the idea of kind of deconstructing that, and like you said, looking at, well, we're very emotionally intelligent creatures for the most part. And so we are looking out for like the well-being of the people around us and trying to create a more like productive, creative, and innovative environment. And I think that that is not typically um, characteristics that you would pen to a woman in the workplace.
Right. I agree there. And there's so many different aspects to having those qualities in a leader and anyone who's, working a team or managing a team, because I personally believe that your, work-life balance, uh, I want employees and team members who are in there for the long haul,
Yep.
and grow with them as they grow in their personal lives. And if you aren't thinking about that, then people will leave at some point. And
Yeah.
I'm 100% for in it for the long haul. Like, I want people to stay, and I want to be able to grow with them. So that to me is a positive. But I don't know. One of the things that I've always been told is like I'm intimidating, and I have no idea how, because I feel like I'm the nicest person in the world. And I just try and help wherever I can. But again, that could be like being overly eager or too
Right.
passionate, about things, easily excited. But it's just one of those things where if you're in the right place, it won't be a problem.
Right.
Because so I've witnessed it firsthand, where I come in and I'm like, all right, I got a solution to this. I'm really excited about it. And it's
There it
just
is.
not met with the same energy. But then I'm in a different room and I'm talking to different people, and they appreciate the initiative that I took to go find a solution to a problem that they didn't even know we had yet.
Right. Well,
You
and
know?
that's what I was thinking is, of course, a person who has thought through an issue, critically thought through an issue, looked at it from different angles, has one, maybe more solutions, because we love a backup plan, and is eager to share that, because the eagerness to share instills it to me, it means there is also a confidence behind that, right? Like I think that this is a good solution. I believe that this is a correct way to potentially approach this problem. For people that don't operate that way, or don't care to operate that way, because I think some things are like innate and other things are not. Um, I can see how that would be very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes up and they're like, this is not a problem, this is an opportunity, and here's what I'm seeing, is that can rub some people the wrong way. I totally get that.
Yeah. And like I said, it just depends on what room you're in.
Right.
And I try and, it goes back to like know your audience too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something, I feel like that's something I think about a lot. And in general, I would say that women have to be a little more cognizant of things like that, than men, at least in my experience, just because I feel like they don't really have to sit there and think about like, oh, who am I talking to, and how can I respect their feelings and like their situation, what they came from, like how are they going to interpret this? That's not
Right.
something they have to really think about. Yet I've learned that I have to think about that all the time, right? Because I don't want any ill feelings toward me, from any sort of leadership or anything like that. Like, I don't want to cause any problems 100%. I'm a problem solver. I like to bring solutions, and I am passionate about that. And um, I would say that it hasn't really stopped me from bringing these ideas or coming at it with that same energy. I just understand their response better. And I understand that it might take a couple approaches to really get the ball rolling.
Right. And, so you share Georgia, so I'll share something that has been tacked onto me that I know about. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that one is something that has been attached to me just from experience and people's responses to it. But I've been told that I'm hard to work with. And I think that in the very specific like situation and role that I held in the departments that I worked with, I think that me having very strong opinions and like diving into like the research and like in marketing, having an understanding of certain like legal ramifications and contracts that we've signed and things like that. And then stepping in and saying, this is a hill that I'm willing to die on, and it not being a very popular hill to die on, or pushing things into the spotlight that I know need to be paid attention to. And it doesn't need to take up like a lot of time, but others feel like it's not that big of a deal. I don't have time to look at this. And I need like input to make the best well-rounded decision for an organization. I can see how that made it look like I was hard to work with, or that my goals weren't aligning with theirs, or, I think that was the big one, is that we just didn't see, eye to eye on what that meant. But, for me, I think that I'm thorough, and I like to take my time on certain projects that I'm working on. I would very much rather measure twice and cut once. And I know that especially like in the supply chain, that's not always people's favorite way to work, because it's a, fast paced, like I hate that buzzword, but it's true. People want to move, 90 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm just now putting my seatbelt on.
Right. And I've experienced that too, because everything does move fast. And I would say, in general, you have to kind of get out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that will kind of go to my book recommendation later. But I would say I'm pretty similar, as in like I'm very thorough, and I don't want to, I'm a perfectionist. I already know that, and I fight it. I'm trying really hard to not care so much about stuff, because at the end of the day, like kind of like what you're saying, you can be seen as like speed bumps. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be seen as a speed bump to getting things done. I understand the concept of like fail fast so you can learn from it. But at the same time, I don't want, if it's preventable, I want to prevent it. And maybe it takes a little bit of time to figure out if it's preventable. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of success when it gives me a lot of anxiety, but I'm learning and I let things just kind of go and it works out. And I'm like, all right, maybe I can give a little bit.
Right.
So that's definitely something I've learned, and it's been really helpful. And I'm still learning. Like I said, I'm fighting the perfectionism every single day. Some of the best advice I've was given was to like slow down to speed up. And that was more so like on my to-do list, because I'm trying to do too much. So basically like shorten it so I can actually get stuff done, instead of trying to work on so many things at once. So I'm really focusing on that. And I've done that probably the past like 2 years, and it's really helped. And I think that it also aligns better with some other people that I'm working with, because they are like, let's just try it. And I'm like, hold up. But, we meet in the middle. And like I said, it's not, and at the end of the day, what is Sarah Barnes Humphrey? She says, collaboration is the future of business. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I put that on like almost all of the workshop stuff that we do, because I believe it so much. It's like, at the end of the day, we're just asking for collaboration, and also to not have negativity tied to the fact that we want that collaboration and we crave it and we're seeking it in all these different ways to but it's one of those things where, if we can redefine these stereotypes and really level the playing field, then that, creates a ground for collaboration.
Right. And I think that plays into what you said about slowing down to speed up, is when you allow collaboration to really happen, I feel like it builds such a solid foundation for a lot of projects, a lot of business goals, like overall business goals. And it might feel very slow and very uncomfortable for the pace that some people prefer. And I think that's okay. I think what that allows is for each person, each department, each leader, and then that trickles down. Like then it goes to directors and then managers, and then how certain initiatives can be seen throughout an organization or be felt by prospects and customers. It allows you to like fail, and if you fall, not fall as far. And I think that then that puts people like maybe like us, it gives us a little bit tighter of a safety net to then push ourselves to try something new, and maybe just measure once and go ahead and make the cut and see what happens, instead of how I would normally approach things. And so the collaboration, there's always going to be a time where it's not a middle ground, right? Where somebody's perspective or opinion is the one that we run with, and we're not finding a balance. That is going to happen. And I think that then creates, like you said, that sustainability of happy workers, knowing that sometimes this idea is just a stronger idea and that's what we're going to do. But more often than not, more perspectives are going to create a more robust solution that more people can get behind. And I hate using the term like buy-in when you're talking internal strategies and processes. I think it's not a buy-in, it's a believe in, right? Like you're changing what they truly believe in as like core processes, core initiatives, core goals for the year, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, you touched on just like, starting from the top. I just 100% believe that. And like any sort of initiatives, if you can start it at the top and get that believe in at the top, then you can really start making change. So, trying to, if you can get like a company or, a leader, a mentor to really, like a male leader, if you can get them involved, like I think that's a huge win and a huge benefit is, yes, I'm trying to help other women talk about themselves in a more positive way and help create that, the perception that they want. But anytime, and I've had, plenty of male coworkers and leaders throughout my career that have been really helpful. But I think, it would be great to have them come do the workshop too, like anytime you can implement that, if you can implement something like this from the top, I would think it would just change that company from, from the inside out, from the top down. Getting, like you said, getting that believe in.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always think about is like, obviously your customers are your customers, but also like your coworkers are your customers. Like, yeah, we have to treat each other kind of like with that same level, like, not just, okay, responding quickly to their emails just as quickly as I would a customer, but, approaching them with trying to get that buy-in and things like that, but definitely starting from the top.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. And it's amazing to me how some organizations, and this is another conversation for another day, but they want to make a change and they start from the bottom. And I think that that's a dangerous way to go about it, because you want to eliminate the stereotypes, the biases, anything like that, the questions, the gray spaces, when doing something that is organization wide, and that has to start from the top. You need the support, and they need to be able, each leader, senior leader down, needs to be able to address with their teams that sit directly underneath them the specific questions and concerns that they'll have. So I'm a huge advocate of decisions being, addressed from the front lines and driven by the feedback and the experiences of the front lines, but being made and implemented from the top down.
Right. And I think another factor to always think about is, if I'm not trying to say that companies or anyone who's not actively doing these things are bad or anything like that.
Right.
But it is one of those things where it comes down to timing too. If they're in a period of growth and everyone's super busy, like maybe you don't have time for different initiatives like this. That's why I think it's so important to do these workshops, because it's like, it doesn't have to be like a full company wide initiative. Like, let's just use better words to try and make a change. So kind of like the little things, but obviously if you have the ability to implement something like this and have it be official company wide, more power to you. I think that's a great way to make an impact. But I do think, there's little ways that you can make impacts too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the workshops that you're doing, and I applaud you for doing that. I'm excited. I'm thinking like, what can I do here in Chattanooga with the people that I know? That a small change can have a really big impact. One team that is communicating better can have a huge impact on, cross-departmental communication. And like you said, we want people to be in it for the long haul. And I'm currently not at a very large organization. And one of the things that I've immediately noticed working at a very small company is the flexibility to ensure that people have what they need, because we're all in different seasons. So like some seasons are very much like pedal to the metal. I'm showing up 100% every single day. I am burning rubber. But then there are going to be seasons and times, over the next several years while I'm at this organization, where that's just not going to be the case. And I think, the communication, combating stereotypes, redefining what those look like, kind of like we said from the very beginning, it gives a bit more of a level playing field to meet individual employees where they are. And that's why I hope it's something that leaders, managers, directors, whatever that title is, they're paying attention to. And if they're not, and if it's somebody that doesn't maybe hold one of those titles, but they are paying attention to it, those are usually the people that end up in charge. Yeah. Those are the people that have advocates behind them when they're ready to take their career to the next step. So I just don't think that you could ever go wrong. I don't think it's ever too early to start.
Exactly. I agree. It's a good way of putting it. I never thought about it that way.
Well, this is a big conversation. And we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much for sharing all of these, insights and your passion behind why it started.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here and just letting me talk about all the stuff that I love to talk about all the time. Like I said, I am passionate about it, and I am here to share any materials that anyone wants. And I hope that anyone who is interested in starting something like this, wherever they're at, will feel confident and try and start something like this there.
Well, before we go, I have one more question for you. And that is either a book that you're currently reading or a recommendation that I need to put on my to-read list.
Okay, so the book that I would recommend is Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. I feel like that's a go-to, but talking about, like rumbling with vulnerability, that's 100% what I feel goes perfectly with the workshop, just because you might feel a little vulnerable when you're trying to redirect that conversation.
Yeah.
And there's so much good stuff in there. And then I do like a fun read is The Watchers by A.M. Shine. It's spooky, it's scary, and they just released the movie with Dakota Fanning. And I like scary books, so that one's pretty cool.
Love
like
that.
Irish folklore. So
oh, okay. Well, that's got to go on the list. I also like spooky, creepy books.
yeah.
All right. Well, if anybody does, like Christina said, have questions, or, you're ready to maybe change some narratives, I believe LinkedIn is the best way to reach you, right?
Yes. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn and I will send you whatever you want.
All right. Well, thank you again, Christina, and to everyone else, we'll see you next time.